the something on March 21st at the 32nd or 32th CALLERLAB Convention. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Seastrom. He's a dentist, that's why we say 32th. Never mind. Ironic, isn't it? Before we get going with Mike, I've had comments, what committees can we be on as partners? What committees can we be on in the other committees in CALLERLAB? And I pulled up the list here. It says Callers Partners. Well, you're already here. Grant writing, and the chairman of that committee just walked in. Hi, Cinda. Handicapable, recruit, promote, maintain, multi-cycle, youth activities, definitions, education, research and development, Caller Association liaison, Canadian advisor, overseas advisor, and foundation fundraising. So if you find any of those interesting to you, find out where they're meeting and go there. Also, if you would spread the word, which I should have done this morning, even if you're not a Caller's partner, you're welcome to join the Partners Committee. If we can be on theirs, they can be on ours. I didn't ask anybody about that, but I'm the chairman, therefore it is. I love this autonomy thing here. If you will, please, Dr. Mike Seastrom.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Beth. I hope you don't mind if I just sit. It's after lunch, and we might as well just chat. Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. If we did just eat lunch, so if you are nestling down into your chair and you feel like nodding off, go right ahead. We don't, as long as you just don't lean on the person next to you or fall forward on the person in front of you, I think that would be just fine. When I first got an email from Bev about participating in this session, I emailed her right back, and I said, I hope you know that I have just gone through a separation, and that with my ex, Gail, and that at one time we had a real successful partner relationship, and that's no longer the case, and we've moved on and separated. And she said, yes, I know that. I just wanted to know if you would speak, and so I come here a little bit I'm excited on one point. I have done these sessions before with partners. I've done them with my ex, and so maybe, I guess by looking back and looking forward, we have another chance to examine what a difficult balance it is to share a passion for an activity, or to even have one partner that has this passion for this activity, and how easy it is to let an activity like this, to let an activity like, I have another acquaintance who is a passionate, he loves to play in a oompa band, playing polka houses and polka places, and believe it or not, that's very big in some areas of the country, and he is very busy, almost like a square dance caller. So he and his wife balance the same kind of relationship and the same kind of issues that we balance. And I'm sure that there's an awful lot of other couples that share something like we do, that has either one partner or both partners passionately involved in either a hobby, an avocation, whatever it is, that you have to somehow balance your lives together. And if there's a family involved, then you've got to balance that along with the hobby or vocation or activity, and make it all work. And what's interesting to me, and always has been interesting, is that what works for one couple doesn't necessarily work for the other couple. And you have to kind of go along and find the right path for you as a partner couple. And that is not, it's an ongoing process. I don't think that it ever stops. And along the way, you have to stop and communicate. And that's really an ongoing thing. But sometimes you really have to stop and pull out the calendars and pull out everything and stop and say, where are we going? Where do we want to be 5 years down the line? Where have we all of a sudden found ourselves in the middle of? And it's really easy to get that way if your regular job changes, or if you, for instance, as a partner, maybe decide to become employed or already employed, or have a job change, or all of a sudden the travel schedule on one partner changes, and all of a sudden you find yourself in the midst of chaos in your life. And how can you make that work? What do you do? What do you stop and sit down? And one of the things that I put down is in our handout today is and started out with communication is the key. And I think that's pretty obvious. But sometimes going through the process, you can complain, you can get upset with each other. You end up, I think, very often taking it out on each other when your greatest alloy or the person you admire the most or the person you want to be with the most, you find yourself resenting them or resenting, I guess, how can I say, channeling your resentment toward your partner instead of the things that are making it difficult for you at that particular moment. And I think that's what strikes me the most, that in an activity like this, that you can have varying degrees of each partner's involvement in this activity, or varying degrees of passion, and sometimes you find yourself going in separate directions. All of a sudden, if you throw a family in there, you're going to find yourself at different stages of your children's development. You're going to find yourself caught up with different responsibilities that split you apart, or that make you want to reevaluate your extent of the involvement in this activity. And so I guess those are the kind of things I would like to talk about today, and I'd like to make this a group discussion so that everybody can speak their mind and maybe ask others in the group if you've had the same experiences or just whatever. I think it's more therapeutic and probably serves everybody's needs if we all get a chance to talk about this. So I guess the first question is here is what do you both want? You know, where are you both at in your lives? And that can change at any time when circumstances change. And I think sometimes when circumstances begin to change, then you need to sit down and you need to start going over some questions and deciding what do you guys want? What do you want as individuals? What do you want as a couple? What do you want as a family? I mean, what are the needs in your family? And sometimes this is not just with your kids. This may be with parents. All of a sudden, you have a parent that is you are responsible for, or that you are overseeing their later years, and that's a big issue too. I think you have to sit down and find out what's really important with you two. And what can you do to change things instead of, and I think it's really easy for all of us to begin to take it out on each other. That's kind of the first thing that just kind of comes out or seems to come out. And then all of a sudden you realize, well, you're irritated, but not necessarily with each other. You're just irritated with the situation. So how can we change things? You know, and I think part of it is finding what's really important to each of you. You know, where do you want to be down the line? We used to have a saying that you know, if we can just get through this month, we'll be okay. You know. And it was easy to sweep things underneath the rug and go on. But I think maybe probably more importantly, sometimes when you're in the heat of discussion about things and you know you're not getting anywhere, you actually need to plan the time. Okay, tomorrow, let's talk about, stop after lunch tomorrow, and let's sit down and let's talk about this instead of sweeping it underneath the rug. And I think it's real easy to do that. What can you do to help each other? What can you do to be supportive of each other? And I think your partner has to know that. And gentlemen, as callers, sometimes I think the partners, we don't communicate very well with our partners what we need. And in return, we don't get the right feedback from our partners, you know, what can we do for them? And part of that is being open to receiving that communication, because it's not only communicating. Interesting statistic that I heard recently that only 7% of our verbal communication is actually sent and received. 7%. That's pretty incredible. I mean, it makes it really hard for us to communicate with each other if only 7% of what you say is heard. So yes, Aaron? Is this being taped? So maybe we should get up here and say this on the microphone. Okay.
I call the session How to Stay Married. And I emphasize two specific things. There are many things, but the two I emphasize is before you really seriously get involved in this, sit down and discuss how much of your family time is going to be devoted to square dancing and the things that make up your square dance life. Now, that's something you should decide before, not after it's too late. And the gentleman says, or the lady says, gee, but I have all these different clubs, and now you're telling me you want me to cut back. No, you kind of need to talk about that ahead of time. You also need to talk ahead of time about how much of your family budget is going to be spent on traveling, records, equipment, and all that kind of stuff. Because that's something else. It's just, oh, I have this great opportunity to buy this great piece of equipment, and so, but, Susie needs braces. So you need to discuss ahead of time, okay, monthly from our budget, we can devote this much. If you can start off brand new callers at the very beginning, thinking about those things from the start, it's easier than trying to go back later and fix things that maybe went wrong.
That's a good point, Erin. I mean, that's the ideal. I think that's the perfect place to start. But how many of you have found yourself in the middle of this activity as a partner, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you're just in up over your head? It's really easy to be in that position. And what do you do from there? I mean, anybody have any thoughts or any comments about how they've handled situations like that in the past? Being too busy, is that an issue that anybody has had to address before? All of a sudden being too busy with things? Anybody? Then busyness has never been an issue with anybody. Has it? I mean...
Yeah, Margaret Harris from Florida, and we got involved quite a lot, but we haven't got family to worry about right now. They're up in Canada, we're down here, and I got into the round dance calling too, so every single day of the week is devoted totally to just square dancing and round dancing, and we are involved. Thank goodness, we like it. We love it. Yeah, otherwise, everybody keeps saying, how can you keep going? But you don't think about things at home like cleaning or anything like that. You do the first things first, which is classes, and sometimes twice a day. But we still like it, and without being out with the people and that, we get depressed at home. My main thing is trying to keep him going when he gets, he's the caller. If the classes, as everybody is finding out, classes go down in size, and he gets discouraged and depressed. How do I get him back up? That's the hardest part. But we are totally involved.
Now, has the issue ever come out where, there's maybe a balance issue? Have you ever thought, it's not a problem with it as far as, no, okay. Has anybody gotten to that point where you're so busy with things you think, wait a minute, we need to shift gears a little bit. Our relationship as a couple?
Well, we've done that a long time ago. I learned that we've got to have some downtime. Therefore, 5th of June to the 15th of September, we do not call weekend dances. We go camping. And it was the world's best thing we ever did with our kids growing up. Thank you, God. We have 4 wonderful children. They have great spouses, and we got 3 little grandchildren, which I have pictures of. And I found out keeping him relaxed, get it off his mind, go with another direction, go camping, where he can sit around, or he can be active, or go golfing. He gets frustrated with that. Then we go back to calling. So we found that we've got to have some downtime. We just absolutely refuse to do dances on the weekends. We will do a couple during the summer. In fact, if you look in our date book, there is no August calendar. August is not in our date book at all, anywhere, ever, because we won't book anything then. We come up with family things. We come up with weddings. We come up with let's go visit some friends. Nothing square dance. Square dance friends. We'll visit with square dance friends, but we don't square dance. Unless we would go to a weekend where we could enjoy ourselves and not him working.
Anybody else?
One thing that we find valuable, and we don't do it as often as we should, but every time we do, we absolutely love it. We try to go square dancing. Not calling, but dancing with our friends. And part of what that's for is sometimes you get to thinking that what we're doing is work. And yes, it is a responsibility. And yes, you are responsible for being a certain place at a certain time and providing a program. But for everybody else that's there, it's their recreation, it's their fun. And it's so easy to let that get away from you. So we try to go out and remember how joyful the activity is never let that get away from us because it is very simple for that to happen.
Well, I can agree. I could not agree more. I have always been a strong advocate that I don't care who you are as a caller, you should be out dancing. And it makes you a better caller. It makes you appreciate what the dancers go through to your calling. And any time that I do a festival, if I've got a tip off and I can jump on the floor, I jump on the floor and dance. I enjoy to do the rounds. I like to dance. It keeps my enthusiasm and passion for this activity up. And one thing that I really enjoy with Jill, by the way, this is my partner Jill, is Jill loves to dance, and we get a chance to get out and dance, and I really enjoy going square dancing. And one of the things that we just recently started, and we kind of keep an ongoing list of things we want to do. Let's put that on our list of things we want to do, whether it's seeing a movie, seeing a play. Let's go there sometime. I want to go to Paris sometime. Just sometime. We'll put it on our list. One of the things that got on our list is, okay, one of the things that got on our list somehow is why don't we take dance lessons sometime? We had taken a couple little series. I think your kids gave us a gift lesson to swing dance lessons. So we took about 6 lessons, and we just have some fun getting out and doing some dancing. And Jill likes to dance so much that sometimes after a square dance we end up at a country western place dancing or something out dancing. Anyway, so we began to take a basic ballroom dance class. Now, I've taught classes for years, and what a hoot it is to be, as a square dance scholar, to be the student. And I mean, I know most of these movements because they're around, everybody knows basic waltz steps and that kind of thing. So the lessons aren't hard, but it's nice. It's our night out, and we go ballroom dancing. And it's just something we can share together. And I'm having a blast. And actually, Jill is way beyond me as far as ball. You've been through this stuff before, so she's humoring me along. But it is fun to have something else beside, because it's so easy to get so caught up every night of the week, and I've been there every night of the week, and all of a sudden you find yourself burning out. You find yourself with something missing in your relationship, and I think it's nice to keep that ongoing list of things that you someday would like to get to and put it out there someplace, and you'll be amazed at how every once in a while something surfaces, and hey, let's do that, let's plan that. And I think it makes a big difference to make downtime and also to plan something like going dancing. Anybody else have anything else that they use or they use as a downtime type thing? Or
Hi, I'm Cinda Ask. I started helping my husband book dances when I married him 13 years ago. And over the years I've developed where I kind of will cross off things on the calendar. I usually try to cross off one weekend a month. Doesn't normally end up that way at the end of the year. I end up having to give up a few if some caller can't make it or a club is desperate. I like to have something available. But there are some dates that I'm more firm about, and I just say no, and he has a really hard time saying no to some of the clubs, and I often will have to give him words to say, you tell them we have a family engagement. And he'll say, what do we have? And I said we have a family engagement. So, and people are usually fine with that. It's just that I know it's real important. And I often tell him, and he'll tell you that I say this, I was a dancer before I became a caller's wife, and I will always be a dancer first. And so we have to go out and dance. And we dance 2 or 3 times a month. So.
Well, that's a very good point. How many of you do the booking as the partner, do the booking for your callers? How many of you find it easier to say no than your partner does? It's amazing. I don't know what it is, but we get put into a spot sometimes where it is difficult to say no. And with email, it has become a lot easier for me because I've had to take over that job. And for me, it's a lot easier to say no by email than it is to say no when somebody's flipping through date after date after date. No, I'm going there. I'm going. I know it's off. I mean, it's hard to do that. So it is. That's a great help. How many of you take a calendar before you ever open it up and just cross out birthdays, family things, and just cross those things out ahead of time? How many don't? Can you book? I mean, does that work for you? If you don't cross out those things ahead of time, you're okay. You want to address that, Ken? No. Okay. All right. I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how I could start a calendar personally without just crossing out birthdays, crossing out. I mean, one thing I never book is my mother's birthday. My mother was the first one that took and booked my dances for me when I was a teenager calling. And one thing and she always crossed out her birthday, you know, and that day is crossed out to this day. That's what I meant. I'd go to that date and cross out. I cross out all the birthdays of my sisters and my brother and my dad and everybody's, you know, and now in Jill's family we cross. I don't just cross it off, because it's really easy to miss a lot of family things or to not be there for your family, and I think after a while that plays havoc with the partnership. So.
I'm Debbie Prescott from Alaska. Our situation is a little bit different. We don't have much family where we are. So we have just 2 kids, and they've been raised in the activity. So we don't have to go through and cross out all the activities. All our kids' birthdays are celebrated at the square dance, and our anniversary party was at the square dance. And it is our social recreation. My husband does lots of other things, and he works other jobs. But that's how we handled it, instead of having to take away, because our schedule is very consistent, because we're not going to do a dance in a different town or for a different club. There's a couple of annual activities maybe, but our downtime is coming to the conventions and coming a couple days early. Like we came for the community dance seminar this year, and we came a couple days early before that. And our daughter's in graduate school, and she came over to visit. And when we're done here, we're going to go over there for a couple days and visit her before we go back home. So we try to incorporate our downtime into activities that we need to go to away from home, so it gets to be a vacation at the same time. It's not a bad thing.
That's it's so neat. I think that there's so many different ways to handle what works for you, and what works for one person definitely doesn't work for another. But I think it's interesting to be in sessions where you can kind of meet and talk with people who are in the same circumstances that you are, because it really makes you see some insight as to how your partnership can work and what you can do to tweak things. I'm sure nobody's got the perfect relationship with the perfect solution, and it just by re-examining those kind of things, I think it really helps. So, any other comments about anybody else as far as handling bookings, how you handle your bookings, how you handle your time?
I said our relationship works really well because it's a 50-50 thing. I tell him what to do, and he does it.
Is that right, Dave? Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes. There's 5 things that I heard one time that I put in the back of my. Well, actually, I wrote it down and I carry it with me occasionally, because when you get into a jam as a husband, I think the first thing you do when everything starts coming down on you is the first thing you say is, "What can I do to help?" What can I do to help? When things are fine, yeah. Sometimes staying out of the way is a good thing. Exactly. Sometimes just clearing away. That's right. Or picking up the pieces afterwards. That's the best thing to do. The second thing is, I never looked at it that way. I never looked at it that way. That's been receptive, I think. And well, let me try that again, Kathy. I never looked at it that way. Is that better? All right. Okay. This one is, I don't have a hard time with this one, but this third one is, that's going to change right now. Yeah, right, yeah. And the other thing, the last thing is, and then what happened? And then what happened? And then what happened? Is there anything else? I mean, actively listening. Bring it. I don't know how well that works, but I carry that around and refer to it occasionally if I need to. Anyway, I think communication is important. We talked about making and keeping personal time and having some dialogue. I mean, I think it's easy, and I found it really easy to sweep things underneath the rug, and I think that's probably one of the easiest things that we can do as couples, to create distance between us, and that distance slides in there before you know about it. And so I think that's important that we stay ahead of that a little bit. So there's some notes on couples dialogue. I think we already talked about needs and wants. everybody know what active listening is? Yeah. Come on, like you mean it. As a guy, okay, I find that active listening was probably not my best suit, and that's something that I think you learn after a period of time, that you better make some eye contact, you better lean your body in here, you better start really talking and understand and really be into this. I mean, right? It's just, you learned it. I think we probably learn it when we start getting about 40, and then after 40 you really start picking up, and you get a little better at 50, and yeah. I mean, and then the deaf thing starts kicking in. You know, start selectively going deaf to the sound of your wife's voice, and yeah. Yes. Wait. I'm coming down on the mic. No problem.
The nature of what we all do, people want to be our friend. People want to talk to us. People want to be close to us. That's part of the whole activity. And so many people come to us and want to chat and want to visit and want to be buddies, and sometimes you feel like you can't pay attention to everybody. So you get out of the habit of truly listening to people, because they all want a piece, and you only have so many pieces to give. So sometimes when you get back with your spouse, you have to say, okay, wait a minute, this is somebody who deserves all the pieces, and I need to really pay attention.
Has anybody found that? I mean, anybody ever had that feeling? And you kind of get back in the car after the dance is over, and there's just total silence. Oh, the sound of the quiet is so nice. It's like there's not a word uttered on the way home. It's like, oh. It is true. It's almost like sensory overload sometimes, and so you find that you just shut down. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's not that you don't love them. It's not that you don't care about them, because you do. You want to know what's happening in their lives, and you want to find out what's happening. But like you said, sometimes it's overload. You can't possibly take it all in and appreciate it all at one time. So.
As a partner, has any partner here ever felt resentment toward maybe a lot of that communication going to your partner, and then in return there's no communication back with you afterwards? Is that an issue with anybody? Or is that? Yeah, I know you're curious. I know you're.
Just once, and it had nothing to do with my husband. It had to do with the dancer who decided that she was going to fall in love with him. Now, being secure in what we have, that's okay. Try your best, because it ain't going to work. But when he's working. So we had gone out as a group of us did, and she started being all over him again. I said, you know, this is okay here, but you aren't getting anywhere with him. But if you do this as a dance, you've got to remember he's working, so stay away from him. The very next dance, he's sitting on the stage. She walked right up between his legs and got right near his face. And I went ballistic. Come with me, darling, we need to talk. And Dave finished his job, and I took her for a walk, because that's the only time I've been upset at somebody communicating with my husband. That's the wrong kind. Yeah, and the worst of it is she moved, and she moved into our neighborhood. But she's 2 blocks away, which is almost far enough. No, they don't dance anymore. You going to throw me a lifeline on this one or not?
You don't want to hear more? What she said to her when they went to the rock? Dave? No, you probably don't want to hear Dave. Okay. Listen, Dave knows. On the microphone, what she said. She said, has anyone ever been in this predicament? Do you know you want to share? No. Kathy?
Kathy Hill, Cincinnati, Ohio. At the beginning of our marriage, my husband did a lot of traveling. I mean, it was all over the States. And he'd come back and tell about the wonderful parties he'd got to go to, and I thought, oh, he was really having a lot of fun. And it kept going on, and I did get a little bit jealous, and I had to teach myself to get over that, and it was one of the hardest pills for me to learn to swallow. But to have a good marriage, you have to trust each other. So I'm not sure what I said to myself. I just had to take a deep breath and say, he came home. He still loves me. Yes, he did. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have that issue, or you want to talk about it? Okay. All right. Good show. Good show.
No, mine's a little less violent. My husband calls for a lot of the singles clubs in our area, and I found that if I see one or two women making an extra effort to get close to him, that I will actually make friends with them. And the closer they get to me, the less likely they are. And this has worked in such a way that a couple of years ago we were at a camp out, and one of the women that I had been a little concerned about, somebody said something, somebody was new, and she said, oh, you don't want to mess with with Cinda. It was pretty funny. I've never really threatened or anything. It's just by making friends with them, I guess maybe it was a little more difficult for them, and they understood what my position was. And I think Kathy's right that trust is a big, big part of it. So.
Thanks for sharing. That's a good approach. Anybody else?
This is a different topic, but when we went to Callers College, we were told all the hats that a caller wears, like marriage counselor, psychologist, doctor, recreational director, all the different hats that a caller wears. And the wife on the sideline hears a lot that he doesn't need to hear because it's upsetting to his concentration and all that. Sometimes you really hear more than you really need to.
Does it ever seem sometimes like it's got written on our foreheads, talk to me, tell me everything? It's like, slow down, too much information here. Kathy?
I came in late, so maybe Mike said something, but I have a real problem with this. Don't tell the caller these things because they'll upset him or her. I don't know, maybe the female callers, it's a problem. I couldn't tell you, but boy, I'll tell you. I'm going to tell my husband anything I want to tell him because I'm the one interacting with those dancers. It's really better if I'm not upset. You know, if they get on my case about something or whatever, he's going to hear it because that line of, oh, don't upset him before the dance, I found that to be a real bit of, yeah, I know, I'm trying to think of something else to say than what I was going to because I shouldn't say it on the microphone. And I'm sure that Mike talked about communication. It's really, really the biggest piece of the pie. You know, if you want to be totally involved, if you want to be a little involved, you got to work it out between the two of you and do whatever works. And it changes. You know, especially if it's a young couple where you're just having your children or the children are, there are a few of them. You know, the kids are young. Even when my kids were in high school, I couldn't go with Larry. We were in an area where there was no mass transit. The kids had to get to their band practice and play practice. I never went, almost never went when the kids were in high school. Now I go all the time, so there's a natural progression of the way your partnership works also. You may want to go, but if you have a family, you can't always go. So the partnership changes, and communication's big. And, you know, you're talking about the women getting close to the men. Communication played a real big part one time because I had a dancer approach me, not about extracurricular activity. And I let Larry know that right away because I didn't want him to ever find anything out. I mean, obviously nothing happened, but I wanted him to know that this man was approaching me so that I would get a little protection at the dance, so I wouldn't be left in any kind of position where I could get, you know, have a problem. So you know, it works both ways, and you need to be really careful about communicating what's going on.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks. Aaron?
I am careful about what I tell Scott when. Now, I tell him everything, but I don't necessarily tell him the minute I hear it. You know, because there's no question, and I don't know if there are a few of you here who've heard Scott call. Scott actually puts on a show. I mean, he is an entertainer from the beginning to the end. And strangely enough, he actually does a better job when he's upset about something ahead of time. But I could tell you stories. But again, you know, he's on a roll. You know, he is up, and he is excited, and the dancers know that he loves to be there. They can tell in every fiber of his being that he loves doing what he's doing. And there are certain things that people tell me which are important but not urgent. They're not going to affect the rest of that evening's dance. So I don't need to tell him right in the middle of the evening. You know, however, the next day, we'll talk about it. You know, so, and I try not to tell him right when the dance is over, because the same thing, he's up, he's excited, feels good about what he did, but I don't try and keep it a secret. On the other hand, every once in a while something comes up, and he's unknowingly made a comment, and somebody just lost a loved one or something like that, and in a strange way it related to it, and he might need to know that so that he doesn't make anyone feel bad. In that case, I might say something, but I think sometimes picking and choosing when we discuss issues is as important as not forgetting to discuss them.
Very true. Very true. Has anybody else want to comment about that particular type of communication with your partner? Well, what's interesting is that very often I think there are partners that will really be your best critic and in essence help you by their critique or their feedback. And then there's other partners that give you absolutely no feedback at all. Oh, it's fine, dear. I mean, even though they heard things or maybe have some comments. I mean, somebody said it was too fast. Somebody said it was too slow. And that, no. I mean, okay.
I promise I'll shut up. When I first got married, I'd been dancing already for quite a long time. And I asked my cousin, who's the person who got me started, I said, do you think I would have married Scott if he was not a good caller? And she said, oh, you would have married him, but he wouldn't still be calling.
It's interesting. How many of you find that it's very easy to be critical or to critique your partner? How many feel that you can be your partner's best critic? Excellent. Critique for the better. I mean, you're working together as a unit anyway. I mean, does anybody find that role difficult? No? Do you? You want to talk, right?
I've learned I'm Ray Ainsworth. I'm from Eris, Louisiana, and Lottie Ainsworth is my partner, or the caller. And I've learned that it's difficult to say something that might be negative, whether it's before, after, during, or whatever. And it's a little more comfortable to find a time well after the dance to diplomatically breach the subject. But we've learned there are many things that I can do better than she can do, and her talent is where she applies her self, and I apply mine to the other things. And we're both very excited about traveling and that sort of thing together. And we do the same as others, that we'll fit our family situations and make it fit to square dancing. Her son and his family square dances, our grandson square dances, and so on. But it is difficult, and I think from the standpoint of being a man or being a woman, whichever is the caller, there are certain roles that a woman can do that a man can't do as far as criticism. Most of us get some form of, well, we know who wears the pants in the family, is what I'm saying. So you have to work around that. Have I said it wrong?
Well, Anybody else agree in a way? I mean, there's certain things that you have to kind of dance around that it is hard to address, or it is hard to communicate. Anybody else have that? Y'all can just say anything you want. Is that right? Well, absolutely. We're done. Yeah, and timing. That brings me to the second page of my handout. Thank you very much for the segue. But it specifically addresses criticism. This is not only criticism of your partner, and it's not only criticism of this is maybe choosing battles with your kids, or your grandkids, or your parents, or however. I mean, sometimes you have to lodge a complaint. I mean, absolutely, sometimes it's necessary. And I think that, first of all, that if you can step through, or you can walk through some of these steps, I think it makes that process of criticism more palatable and makes it more of a communication effort instead of just a critique session. Because I think that some of us are more sensitive to criticism, and you might be on your end as well as your partner might be on his end, or vice versa. And so I think that starting out with praise along the same subject is a help. I mean, I think the bottom line with all of us is that because we deal with people in our activity, that we become students of people. We become in some form, behavioral scientists. There are tremendous volumes of tapes and books out there on dealing with people and relationships and dealing with groups of people and leadership. And I know we just used to talk a lot about leadership and how we as callers and callers partners can lead groups and make things work. So I think one of the biggest problems that we have as an activity is the interpersonal conflict that sometimes can blow our activity apart, or can make people leave our activity, or can make some of our very best people get just fed up and quit entirely. So I think becoming a student of people is really important. There's some wonderful tapes you can listen to on the way to the dance, simple ones like dealing with difficult people. Some of them are hysteric. I mean, they're really funny, and yet they really have some basic ideas and ways to handle difficult situations with other dancers, with your club officers, with your partner, with your kids, with anybody in your family. So I think the idea of starting out with praise is a big step forward. I think also reinforcing these small steps toward change. If maybe you can approach something like this. If you have an issue, anybody bring up an issue about criticism or something regarding your partner? How about if I just say your caller calls too fast? Okay, that's a criticism that you're hearing constantly at your caller's dances. Okay, how can you approach that subject? I mean, Aaron, how would you approach that if you heard that comment?
I would probably say, that I would probably mention that there were certain people that mentioned to me how they liked this particular aspect of the dance. They loved the way you sang that particular song. They thought the choreography in this section was excellent, but possibly for some of the dancers that the pace was a little bit too much for them, and he might consider making one tip a hot hash tip to get in that faster paced dancing for just a certain group of dancers and toning down the pace the rest of the evening.
Now, in her comment, look down on this promise, this whole thing to promise to be respectful. All the time she was being respectful as she talked about this, and she praised his calling and in the dance in general. She looked at reinforcing small little steps, like maybe we can take this step and maybe make one tip a hot hash and slow it down, have a calm tip. She's looking at one complaint. We're just addressing one issue, not the whole dance. Like, Jesus, the whole dance was horrible, man. We didn't think, tackling the whole thing at one time. And her motives are in the best interest. She's interested in having his reception as a caller be successful and their dance successful, and so and she's picked up an ideal atmosphere, like someplace away from the dance and at a different particular time, and she has never said why. Why do you do this? Why do you always call that particular number so fast? So she's staying away from that, and there's no anger involved, or if there would be some kind of an anger, maybe a personal issue or something like that, you can express that appropriately. So all those things are natural to this whole issue of lodging a complaint. And I think on the other side of it, you look down to empathize in that person's position. I mean, you can see that sometimes you get, even if you went a step further and said, you know, I realize that sometimes in the excitement of the dance, it's really easy to get wound up. But you realize that as we get to the end of the dance, some of these people are not in a great physical shape, or they're tired, or they're older, or whatever. And so maybe it would be good at this time of the dance to do a slower number. And at that same time, you're acknowledging with the facts, with the fact that you get your callers caught up in the evening and the excitement of some of the dancers on the floor, and basically expressing just a simple feeling, well, maybe we can slow this thing down a little bit. So a lot of us go through this process naturally, but I think there are some things here that are good to analyze when you're stepping back from a situation, and if you have a communication or criticism that is somehow not received favorably, step back and look at these steps and think, was there anything I omitted in here? It's really easy to go right for the jugular sometimes when you're upset. And sometimes it's not even being upset about that particular issue. It's upset about something else. But this is the time when the jugular's there, so you kind of go for it. And so I think and we all do this. I think callers do it as well, right? You bet. We do. We do it too, right? Human nature. It really is human nature. There's no doubt about it. So I think that's really important. You got it.
Maybe I'm fortunate, but I have learned just a lot of these idiosyncrasies are she criticizes herself more than she deserves to. And sometimes it's just a matter of listening to her and occasionally giving her a high five or whatever when she does a good dance. But maybe all callers are that way. Maybe they know if they happen to have screwed up or whatever, and so they have this self-criticism of themselves that sometimes it's just a matter of you're not the critic, but they're the critic, and you're kind of supporting their thoughts there by what you say. So I don't think you have to be a critic to be a partner.
You're absolutely right. I mean, some callers are their worst critics, or they're tough on themselves. And how many of you have callers or as caller partners that are very critical of themselves, more critical than? So how do you work with that as well? Aaron?
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to monopolize. I happen to be a round dance cuer also, and I'm very critical of myself as a cuer. And one interesting thing I find, men by nature, how many of you ladies find that your spouse by nature wants to fix everything, right? And sometimes we don't need it to be fixed. Sometimes we just need somebody to say, I understand that there's a problem, I know you're working on it, and I love you, and I'm going to be there while you work it out. And I'm amazed and very excited that you've already figured that out, that she just needs somebody to listen to her and commiserate with her and not to say, I can fix it, I can fix it. No, and my husband is famous for being that. He goes, well, I can fix that. And I go, well, no, you can't fix it. I have to do it, but I need you to be there for me while I do.
Boy, that hits the nail on the head. I mean, by nature, I think we guys like to fix things. Let's, just simple, it's logical. Took me a long time to learn that one, I'll tell you. And still, I struggle with it. I just think that's the mindset of guys. We're from, Mars, you're from Venus. Or, that's a great book if you haven't already read that one. I'm sure everybody has, but a good one to learn. Yeah?
I'm Dave Sutter. I'm Deb's other half. Not the better half, no. But we kind of have a running joke of that way we handle criticism. I know whether I call a good dance or a good tip before she does most of the time. And I think that's true with most callers. They know whether they have the floor or not. They know whether they called a good tip or a good dance. And there's times when I get lost, as I'm sure Mike never does, but I do once in a while. And we had this running joke that I had my head up my you fill in the blank. And so after the dance, she says, well, your head wasn't too bad tonight. In fact, after one particular tip, she sent a dancer up with a flashlight. So I knew I wasn't the best tip of the night. But that's one way we can do the criticism. We both know, that we get the communication going in a good way. because I know that she didn't appreciate that tip, and like I say, I probably knew it long before she did. But there's one way we can get the criticism going in a humorous way, and we still understand each other.
But what a better way to communicate with something like that than or chat each other a little bit, or encourage each other, or to even something like that lets Dave know that you know, she recognizes it, she sympathizes it. You know, here, have a flashlight. I love that. That's great. That's great. Can we put that on the tape? You put it? You just did. Okay, no problem. That's right. That's right. Anybody else have any other way that they handle those kind of situations with each other? I mean, I'm sure you all have some stories you could probably tell that might shed some light or give somebody else a reason to be able to put some of this in a more humorous, some of this communication that we have. Because after all, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being human. There's nothing wrong with making a mistake. And do you want her to? Oh.
It was only a pen light. Anyway, one of the things that I learned from listening to Dr. Laura, and every time I think about it, and when I see it happening, I go, yeah, she's right. If men have an argument between, or a disagreement or a comment, you know, let's take care of it, it's done, forget it. They'll never bring it up again. But when a woman gets her feelings hurt, or there's been something said that she didn't accept in the right way, or she thought it was said the wrong way, she'll ruminate like a cow chewing cud. You know, she'll chew on that for days. I have been so upset with him, I haven't talked to him for 3 days, and he never even knew it. He found out about it, and I'm sitting there stewing on it. So you have to pick your battles and look at what, you know, is this the battlefield I want to die on? You know, is this the one I want to take to the 8th round, or do I want to, you know, you just have to decide which is the most important. And like when he said, when we get a tip that neither one of us are real pleased about, okay, let's go to the next one. It's over. But I've slowly learned that not everything is a major crisis. If you ask the dancer 2 days later, do you remember that tip that went bad? And you go, no, was there? You know, so it isn't life and death, but you have to know that men are going to let it go immediately and women are going to work on it a while.
It's true. It's true. It really is true. Anybody else? You said something about lessons, and this thing is one of these little things I have instructions for life. It says when you lose, don't lose the lesson. You know, so sometimes she's absolutely right. You definitely pick your battles. Anybody else have ways that you handle issues between you that seems to work for you? Other than flashlight, yeah.
Mike Oliver, Denver, and I'm a fairly new caller. I've only been calling for about 8 years, and someday I'll get a quarter as good as Mike. But just getting into the activity, even though we've been married for a long time, she had to learn, like you said, idiosyncrasies. It took us several times driving to lessons or dances or whatever. I'm going through the dance in my mind before we get there, and I don't say a word. And she's like, we get to the dance, and she's like, did I do something wrong? I was like, no. So now she's figured out if I don't say anything, it's okay. I'm just thinking about what I'm going to do. After the dance, if I get in the car and I'm driving home and I don't say anything, she's like, you did okay. Really? Yeah, because like you said, we're beating ourselves up because, you know, the 3 dances, the one you planned, the one you did, the one you should have done, you know, and you're thinking about all those on the way home. So, again, communications is key. Not only verbal, but if I'm up on stage doing the tip and I look back and she's sitting there like John Jones, I know I've got a problem and I need to go after that tip.
And I think if we only communicate verbally 7%, that nonverbal is big, I'll tell you. Yeah. That nonverbal. How many have certain ways you nonverbally communicate with your partner? I hope I see every hand come up. That's one thing you guys are born with. It's interesting. In 1985, I believe, we started talking about this issue about how you reform a square when it breaks down. And early on, I don't know if some of you were in CALLERLAB back then, but we assigned the head men the task of having everybody square up and go home, and the head couple slide out to the right, and you make lines, and boom, we got it. Well, for 2 years we tried that, and it was it was an experiment. We realized that the head men are never going to tell anybody to go home. They'll wander around. They're going to try to make it work no matter what. The guys are going to make it work. So I think it was 1987 that Jack Lasby decided, why not put the head ladies in charge? He said, because the head ladies know how to just stop and put their hands on their hips and stare. And men all of a sudden dance around, you look over and this woman is look. And you go, at your own spot, man. Women have this stare. You guys are born with it. It's absolutely incredible. And I have taught that to my classes every year. I mean, I just teach, and it's incredible. They learn that so fast. I mean, it's just absolutely, and it doesn't take the guys long. I mean, it's like when you're a kid and you're in that cookie jar and your mother's eyes were on the back of your back, and you felt those eyes back there. Oh man, you know. And so, but just this year they changed it, and so it's just everybody go home, and So I don't know how we're going to be able to. I mean, I started teaching it the new way, but I kind of like the old way. I think there's.
You do have to watch, though, that the signals that you use with your spouse, that you keep them with your spouse. Years ago, before I was married, I worked with another caller who was a challenge caller, and we were putting together these little flashcards for C2. And at the time, I didn't know C2, but I had to make up a template for what the cards would look like, so I made up some calls. And one of them was heckle the caller. And the definition of heckle the caller was place your right thumb to your nose, wiggle your fingers, and go, nee. That was, this big call. Well, one night, that particular caller I was working with had the square half out. And I looked at him, and I went like this. And from that point on, that became our signal that you're half out, as I would look at him and wiggle my fingers like this. Well, I moved back to Sacramento, and I'd only been home a couple weeks and went to a dance. And the caller was Bobby Byer. And the very first sequence of the day, he had his half out. And without even thinking, with just no hesitation, it took him forever to ever speak to me. He said, So just be careful that any signals you use are the standardly acceptable ones and not.
Love it. Anybody have signals you guys use like that amongst yourself? Anyone would like to share those signals? I mean, is that shaking your ears too loud? Put your finger in your ears too loud? Yeah? Should bring this. Wait.
Jay Silva from Northwood, New Hampshire. If I'm calling too long, she'll be up in the back of the room. If I happen to turn and she's right there, she'll go. That's it. Stop.
Yeah, is that yours? Interesting. Well, that's interesting because sometimes you get caught up talking to people, or somebody's really got you pinned down and they're talking, and I'd hear that clear the throat in a minute. I mean,
I'm not that subtle when I'm really not. Sorry. We go on BTO. That means break time's over. Most of the dancers now know what BTO is because, he'll be talking to somebody and I just say BTO and I'll walk off. And he'll wander off and they'll say, what was that? What was that? So somebody else will now tell him break time's over. And when it's time to start and when it's time to stop, if he doesn't catch on quick enough, then we let him know. So they're not always just, subtle signals because sometimes you have to meet my husband. Subtle doesn't always work. Well, that works out too. So we have those kind of things to help out.
Yeah, that's good. I know that some people already have it set up in their computer where something goes off, or you play a record one time through and the record's over, or if you have rounds and the rounds are over, or something like that. But yeah, that's always an issue. I think those things are helpful. That communication at the dance is really important. Kathy?
I do Larry's sound work. I mean, when we're in a hall that he knows how to set the sound. But if we're in a strange hall, I do walk the floor and I do the sound, and I'm supposed to check it at the first tip. You know, when there's people in the hall, it's different than when we sounded it before the people got there. And sometimes he isn't looking at me. And I'm thinking, gee, I was supposed to sound this hall or check the sound for him, and I can't get to him. So the dancers get a real laugh because I walk right up to the front of the stage, and I stand there, and I look at him with my hands on my hips. And he looks, and he wants to know what it is. I mean, I have signals for sound. I tell him whether it's his voice or whether it's the record is too loud, too soft. You know, I do the arm across the throat thing when he gets too long, or a lot of times I'm dancing, and I can tell that maybe there's somebody in my square that's really starting to lose because he has gone on too long. He's pretty good about that most of the time, but, you know, sometimes you have an older person or somebody who's been sick or something's going on that they just can't dance anymore, and it's, you know, I do that. Quit it, you know, right now. Doesn't always listen, but hey, you know.
What about, so what do you use if the music's too loud? So a record goes around with your finger, pointer finger. Okay, your thumb goes up, your thumb goes down for music up or music down. Voice, you point to your mouth, and then same thing, up or down. Okay. Sound on the ear, point to your ear. Yeah, so some people use the ear for the music, point to your ear. I think, yeah, whatever, that kind of thing. Treble, is it? That's interesting. Now there's a comment about that's pretty good. With someone who understands the graphic equalizing part of this thing, and it's interesting. She's like almost like a times out sign for treble, and then up and down. What else is she just basically pointing treble and saying up or down? Okay, interesting. Anybody else have signs or signals that you use to? Now let me, Jen.
When Mike went to college school last, he was told to keep his elbow up because you will sing into the microphone and it will be better. He will see me all the time going, getting your elbow up. And I will also, if he's choppy, as stop and go dancing as a new caller, that sometimes happens, I will chop and he'll know that he needs to get it going again.
Smooth it out. You mean for like overflow? You're just like your finger around, going around. That's true. You know, sometimes you as a partner are dancing a series of combinations that, oh man, you're spinning around, and if he's not out there dancing, he doesn't understand that. And it's nice if you come off right at the point where it's happening.
I have a question for you, Mike, because you seem to be doing it constantly. When you're calling, do you ever have a keeping a hand in your pocket, in your pants pocket?
You know, it's interesting you say that because I you know, just this last year, I started wearing pants like this. I have always worn Western cut pants and boots, and there's a little bit of a trend in our area to get into an after 5 dress at our dances, and not so much in Western wear. As most of you know, it's hard to find Western wear anymore, and so a lot of us dress in exactly where I roll my sleeves down, I button my sleeves up so I have long sleeve shirts. But and that's one of the big problems I'm having, because I never would stick my hand in my pocket like this, but now it's really easy to put my hand in. And I hate that as a caller, sticking your hand in your pocket, you know, standing around, you know, and that's generally not my style. But you're absolutely right. That's an issue. Wait, let me get this.
That's funny because Saturday night at the dance I did in Vermont, I did have my left hand in my pocket, and all I could feel was somebody come up behind me and go, take the hands right out of my pocket. I didn't know whether it was my wife or my daughter. It was one of the two, but I didn't know which. So I have a habit of doing that sometimes, but they can't do that if you're up on a stage. So, and then she'll be down the back going, she's mouthing the words, get your hands out of your pocket. So it's a hard habit to break, but...
You know...
New England was settled first. We don't have the accent you all do.
She's absolutely right.
I suggest to every gentleman caller is at least every couple of months get in a square and dance the ladies' part for a tip or an evening or something, because it is so easy to lose track of exactly, you know, because most overflow does occur on the woman's part, not the gentleman's.
Yeah, I think that's really important to consider that the turning direction. I don't care whether it's women or men, or sometimes only 2 women in the square at a time. And I've heard callers actually say that, it's only 2 women, it's no big deal. But I was only half the women, or I've heard you seen it with half the guys, so it's only uncomfortable for 2 of the guys. So that's not that big a deal. I think it's a big deal. Wait till you get in that spot and you start dancing that spot, and you realize this is not fun. And I think it's really true. One of the other things that as long as we're talking about it, brings up a good point. And we were, was it Saturday night we went to a contra dance? Sunday night. Saturday night. We heard from somebody that there's a contra dance here locally, and so we went out contra dancing. And I don't know how many have been traditional contra dancing in a long time, but at home we call them the sweat and swing crowd. I mean, you sweat and you swing a lot. And one of the things we teach when we swing, and I know a lot of people in square dancing feel like swing is just too much for them anymore, so they don't swing. And yet, I think they don't swing because they don't properly know how to swing. And we as callers and caller partners should be teaching properly swing. And we should be teaching eye contact when you swing, because the key to not being dizzy anytime you turn is making eye contact with the people that you're dancing with. And that's one of the things that I find in square dancing that we've gotten away from is eye contact with our other dancers. And the nicest thing about this square dance activity is the fact that it is a team sport. It is something we can all work together to make something work and have a good time in. But how many of you just find when you're dancing, you're staring off into no place, and you're not, and you get dizzier, and it stops the interaction in your square. And if you teach looking at your partner, looking at the person you swing with, and smiling and interacting in a friendly sort of way, it's a lot friendlier. There's a lot more interaction, and the dance is a lot more fun. And that's the one thing that we found immediately dancing with these people is that they make constant eye contact. When we teach walk all around the left-hand lady, we teach them so they make eye contact. You smile at each other as you walk around the left-hand lady, and that friendly flirtation, but the friendly interaction that occurs among square dancers is one thing that makes our dance unique. And I think as callers and partners, we should accentuate that. The other thing is if dancers are having trouble, particularly our new dancers, when you teach them to when they draw that blank, you've seen that blank before on dancers, some of us have it occasionally, you just get that deer in the headlight look like, the bottom line is teach them to be looking for someone else looking for them. And teach your dancers that when they're dancing, the best thing they can do as an angel or someone who knows what movement is coming next, to make eye contact with that next person that they're going to be dancing with. If they can make eye contact with them, they hardly have to say a thing. Right there, they're making eye contact with them, they extend that hand out, and bam, it helps that dancer be more successful. So be teaching eye contact, and teach that to your new dancers as well as your existing dancers. Accentuate that thing. That's something that we're kind of running out of a little bit in square dancing. The other thing that's a real pet peeve of mine is applause. How many find anymore the square dancers do not applaud at the end of a tip? And I know that even last year, John Jones mentioned at one of the after parties that you should be applauding and turning around. And I mean, how many times everybody bends down in the square and thank you, and they, as John said, turn their fanny to the caller. The bottom line is we applaud not only for the caller, but we applaud for the other people in your square. And if you're a club caller, or you are a teacher, or you make sure that your dancers finish the tip and they applaud for each other, and turn around and applaud to the caller or the cuer, and then thank each other after that if they have some kind of a deal that they do, whatever it is you do in your area to thank each other, whether you say thank you or whatever it is, because every area has a little bit different way about doing it. And if you're a caller and you have a round dance cuer on the program, and the round dancers are not applauding after the round dance, tell them, hey, you got a great cue up here, or this person spends a lot of time working on this round. Applaud. Tell your round dance people. Applaud for each other first. Turn and applaud to your partner for dancing with you, and then applaud, because we need some of that. That's part of the excitement that adds to our dance, and part of the tradition in our dance that we should be working on. So those are some of the issues that I think we can work on together to get our dancers more passionate about what they're doing, to more excited about what they're doing, and I think that they'll be more excited about talking to their friends and coming in and joining us too. Yes. Yeah.
You're talking about how a partner will go something like that.
Dave and I have been talking to each other, and nobody's seen it or heard it. A couple of times I got his attention, and you didn't even know it. That's it. No, but it's real short, it's real quiet, and it's for some reason that can be heard a lot longer, a lot further than somebody going, because a lot of what, I'm sorry, but in the Midwest, you got a cold, you're doing that a lot.
But it's true. That kind of communication is really important. Whatever works for you. I mean, obviously, if you can get his attention with clearing your throat, or that works.
Change the subject a little bit. I'd like to know how the partners deal with either dancing or not dancing at a dance.
I'm going to go to Janet and right back there.
My name's Janet, and I am not dancing. My arthritis has gotten so bad to the point where I do not dance, but I go to every dance. And I go to every class, every party. We do everything together. And there's two ways I handle it. Usually I will ask Mike to please announce that I am not dancing tonight because of my knees. And the dancers are very receptive to that. If he forgets, which he does 50% of the time, it doesn't take long. I will have maybe one person, maybe two, ask me to dance, and I'll say, no, thank you. I'm not dancing tonight. And it goes through the club, and I don't get asked again, but I'm always there.
Either that or I've got the John Jones look, and it's like, what did I forget?
Actually, this is something I heard another caller do many, many years ago, and it was incredibly effective. He said the first thing of the evening, he said, hi, I'm so glad to be here, and I'd like to introduce you to my partner, so-and-so, and she loves to dance. And that's all he had to say. Now, obviously, I can't always dance either because I have the same knee problem. But let your partner know that all he has to do is say those 4 words. She loves to dance. And that if you want to dance all night, you absolutely will. When long time ago, went to a dance, first time I'd been to the club, but Dave had been there before, and I sat there all night, and nobody talked to me, nobody danced with me. I'm thinking, I really like this sport. The next time I went, I decided, it's a 50-50 street. If I'm going to sit here and look good, they're not going to come near me. So I started going to people and saying hi to them. I've never had to sit out except when I've told people that I just can't this time. When he's calling and I'm queuing, I sometimes become breathless dancing that fast tip, and then I can't cue. So I know when I have to say, no, I can't do this tip, I have to cue next, and I got to work, or excuse me, but I got to go, I got to work, that kind of thing. But if you don't go to them, or even look receptive to the point that somebody would even ask you, go ask them. We can ask the boys to dance. Learned that in junior high. Well, some people did.
That's true. That's true. Ray?
I was about to say the same thing, that Lottie basically points me out prior to starting the dance, and she'll say something like, he's available. So I usually dance every tip. When that doesn't take place, well, I go out and I ask if she's calling in another club, I ask the club president or an officer who the single ladies are. And generally there are more single ladies than guys there, so I dance every tip. Yeah.
I believe we have a choice. We can either say yes, thank you, or no, thank you. But if a caller is up waiting to have a square filled, as a partner, you should be able to take somebody, whether it's a man, woman, child, whatever, a broom, and fill in to help out. So we do have a choice. I started this when I was a single, and I've continued it to this day, and I try never, ever to miss. If somebody's partner comes to dance with me, not a single man, but somebody's partner or husband, at the end of that tip, I will go to the lady and thank them for the tip. And I do this every time. That way the next time they're not so, they're not going to feel so put upon when their partner goes to dance. Also, a lot of our clubs have taken up the style of some of the gay clubs, which is nobody asks anybody to dance. And we have several clubs now where the people just get on the floor and they get in a square and someone will come dance with them. And we don't expect anybody to ask. And in a way, you know, you're kind of missing an old tradition, but I'll tell you, for some of those single ladies who are so nervous about being there by themselves, it really makes them feel more secure when they can just get up and dance.
We do that in our new dancer classes. If you don't have a partner, or you don't, just get up on the floor, we'll fill it in, and we always do. And we have quite a few ladies in our club that come to dance or come to class night, and they're wearing pants, and they can fill in any spot. And I usually once an evening praise any of our angels who can dance either side or dance either part, and say it's just, I mean, come on, this is a team dance, let's have fun, you know, and there's less of the restriction on this couple situation here where we can do that. I'm lucky because Jill can fill in and will oftentimes fill in the guy's spot, and doesn't make any difference. Right? It's just fun to be out there dancing, so it makes a big difference.
Being in a small area, we have a little bit different situation. Right now in our town, we have 2 callers left. One is single gentleman, and I'm not able to dance. And, you know, after 30 years, that's kind of rough. But we recently had an event happen, and the cuer came, and he was doing his job. Nobody asked the cuer's partner to dance. And when I brought it up afterwards, well, gosh, we never thought of that. And the callers are no longer educating the dancers. That I remember back when I first got married, we figured out that, you know what, if each gentleman missed one tip a night with their partner, that the caller's wife would never, ever, ever have to sit out, and the couple would only have to miss one tip. At that time, it was like every 6 months. We're talking long term. At this point in time, yeah, you might have to miss once a month, but you know, even in a small group. But if the callers don't educate the people to dance with the caller's wife, even if you start out with making sure it's for someone out of town, we only have 2 out-of-town dances a year when this might come up. And if the caller's partner doesn't come with them, I've wasted my effort. But sometimes it's just part of more education.
Yeah, it brings up a good point that most of you may remember when it was very common for a club to have a dance card for the caller's partner. That the club just automatically had their name on the top of it. They had so many lines, and that dance card was just passed around, and different gentlemen signed it for every tip of the evening. It was very common. Some clubs even have a garter with their club thing, and they would pass around the garter. The guy that got the garter next would be the one that would dance with the caller's partner. So remember to pass these kind of ideas on to clubs that you have contact with, so that maybe if a guest caller, maybe you're the regular club caller, and there's a guest caller the other dance of the month or whatever, or every once in a while, have your club have that set up and ready to go so they're educated. It was very standard for many, many years to have that going. Another thing that I like that is really a neat thing that some clubs do is they have a parking spot close enough to the front door so that when you drive in, that you can actually park and haul your equipment in without hauling half the block down, because there's a parking spot there for you. And if your club isn't doing that and you got guest callers coming, and do that. There's some of these other traditions that are neat things that we've somehow, in some of our clubs anyway, have let some of those things pass. And we're in the leadership position to be able to pass that information on. So when you see that happening, you know, make sure that those kind of things get passed along, because it really makes a big, big difference. Bill, I'd like to thank you for having me out, and thank you for your input. And I've really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much to Mike. If you have not signed the attendance list when you came in, because at various times coming in and out, please do that before you leave. Our next gathering will be at 3:30 in the Collins room. This will be our committee meeting. We're going to discuss things we want to accomplish in the next year. If there's things that you have on your mind or things you have ideas for, we really, only old business we have is to talk about partners being on committees, voting members on committees, but not voting in the general meeting of the CALLERLAB itself. So those are the only 2 things that we have to talk about in the next session, but we need your input, and we need you to come up with some ideas of things that we can do as a partners organization and a committee so that we stay viable and that we can keep our partners involved in the other committees. So, sure.
I just want one more soapbox that if you don't already subscribe to American Square Dance Magazine, it is our only national magazine. There's a deal here at CALLERLAB for our callers and a special rate to get in. it's, like I say, it's our only national magazine. It really gives you a lot of information on what's happening in square dancing and a lot of products and a lot of information. Every caller and partner should subscribe to this magazine. And if you have active club people, they should too. It's just there's good information here. A lot of times there's great articles on things your club can be doing. There's a wonderful article by John and Linda Saunders in the, I think the January issue on different themes you can have for dances all the way through the whole year. Wonderful stuff in here. And so if you don't subscribe, pick this up and take advantage of this offer here, because there's money that goes to the Arts Foundation, and I've also got subscription links. So please subscribe.
I told him he could do that. Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here. Appreciate your being here. And we'll see you in the next session. If you haven't signed in on our sheet, please do. And we'll see you around.